Welcome to the March ACA Roundup. My name is Karen Woodcock. I'm one of the consultants with O'Neill Marketing, and we're very excited to have you join us today. And I apologize for the delay. I'm having some technical difficulties, so thank you for your patience. But let's get started. First of all, I just want to make you aware at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A tab, and please use that if you have any questions during the presentation. And you would just click on that Q&A and enter your question, and we will try to answer your question during the webinar. If we don't get to your question, we will follow up after. And please, one thing, don't put in anonymously, because if you do put in anonymous, then if the webinar completes and we haven't been able to answer your question, we won't be able to address it and get back to you. So please be sure to enter your information so we can answer your question either during the webinar or following after the webinar. And just to let you know, there is an email that will be sent out to everyone afterwards, and it will be with the webinar, the presentation, these slides that you're going to see today. If you want to see the entire webinar, because we are going to have a live demo today, then you would be able to find the webinar recording in your O'Neill Agent portal under the Resources tab. So be sure to look at that if you wanted to refer back to it for any questions you might have, or if you wanted to watch it again or to share it with other agents. So let me get started. Oh, I gotta go right here. Okay, so some industry news. As we know, there's not a lot going on with ACA right now, but we want to give you an update of the things that we have learned and just to keep you up to date with what's going on. So with your HealthSherpa, the carrier tab. So in case you haven't seen this, and this is something that's on your HealthSherpa, you want to go to the top right. You'll see this gear icon at the top right. And when you click on that, it's going to drop down and you're going to have an option of carrier. When you click on the carrier tab, it's going to open a screen similar to this. This is where you need to keep up to date all of your states that you're licensed in and the carriers that you are appointed with. So you're going to see this is, I just have, for example, I'm licensed in Georgia, but something new that they have added is they have it broken out for some of the carriers, different, I don't know, different segments for that carrier for different parts of the state. But when you are appointed, say with Anthem Blue Cross or with Ambetter, you just want to click yes on each one of these. And what I found is that Ambetter actually clicked yes for me on all of these that I was appointed with. So I didn't have to do anything. But if you're adding new states and you're finding these different options, you just want to click yes for each option with that carrier that you are appointed with. And just, you always want to keep in mind, this is something that you need to keep updated. This is not something that HealthSherpa would be able to update for you. So anytime you're adding a state or a carrier, you want to make sure that you go into this carriers tab and add that state that you now are licensed in and to add the carriers that you have. And we just want to make you aware of this so you're not wondering when you see it like I did when someone brought it to my attention. So just wanted to make you aware of that. And the other important update is that we're seeing this with some states now, is that the NPN override is not going to be allowed any longer in the state of Wisconsin. So once again, we're encouraging all agents to get appointed in the states that you're licensed. It's important to be appointed with the carriers that O'Neill Marketing works with. And you'd find this in North Carolina and in South Dakota also. And it seems to be something that is happening within the industry. So definitely recommend that you start getting appointed with the carriers in the states that you're licensed with. And this is just something that I think we're going to start seeing more and more of. So it's a good idea. And especially now when it's a little bit quieter, this is the time to start requesting those appointments, not just before OEP starts up, because that's when the carriers get very, very overwhelmed with all the appointment requests. And it's better to do it now when they have the time to process those requests. So just to keep you updated on that. And I'm going to move forward. So just some news with O'Neill Marketing and contracting updates. So the transfer blackouts, now just keep in mind when we say there's a blackout, that is only for if you're transferring your current appointment. So if you were aligned under a different FMO or GA and you're transferring that appointment to O'Neill, there is a blackout period in place right now with Ambetter, but it is going to end on April 15th for Ambetter and sometime in August or June, I'm sorry, for Oscar. We're not sure when, but if you have already put in a request for those appointments that it's a transfer, once those blackout periods are lifted, then our contracting office will go ahead and start processing it. So there's no need to re-request it if you've already put in a request. And you should be getting notifications from our contracting that they would, first of all, that it was blacked out period. So you should have been informed of that. And that once that blackout period is lifted, then we will start that process for you. So just to keep you up to date on the contracting, that's the only contracting blackouts that we're aware of right now. Hopefully there won't be any more until we get closer to open enrollment. Once again, that's when a lot of the carriers will start having blackouts. And I touched upon this last month, the new feature that you're going to see on our O'Neill agent portal very soon. This isn't available yet, but we are very excited about the new feature that's going to be available to agents. And we have Will today who's going to give you a live demo to show you all a lot more about the features and walk through what it's going to offer for you and giving you a great snapshot of your book of business. So you'll be able to see your customers on your agent portal, your whole book of business. It's going to be a direct link with HealthSherpa. So I'm going to stop sharing now and let Will take over. And he's going to show you a lot more about what you're going to be able to see on your O'Neill agent portal. And once that feature is available, and we will certainly keep you up to date when that happens. And we're very excited to be able to share this with you. So I'm going to stop sharing and I will turn it over to Will. So thank you, Will.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Once that's down, let me go ahead and pop my screen up here. All righty. And just let me know, Karen, when you're able to see this. Should be
Okay. Yeah, I
ideally
can
right
see
about
that.
now.
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Well, excellent. Appreciate the intro, Karen. Thank you, everyone, again for coming out here today. And I know we talked about this briefly in last month's roundup, but we didn't quite have the finishing touches on everything. But now, as we're approaching the time where we're going to release this to the public, wanted to give just a little bit more in-depth walkthrough of some of the new features, some of the changes that you're going to see coming to the O'Neill portal here in just the next few weeks. Karen mentioned a lot of stuff that's going to happen. There are definitely going to be some, maybe smaller, more nuanced changes like, how the appointments page is structured. Some of the UI like that might be modified a little bit, but really here, I'm just going to focus on the big changes that are going to jump out at you when we release that to the public. So again, this is mostly what it's going to look like. Might be a few other smaller, design changes that are implemented, but there are a few really big things that you're going to notice that are also going to be, I think, very, very helpful to a lot of agents here. So, I'm starting right just here on my agent portal homepage. And the first big change you're going to notice that I can't really demonstrate here, but that you will want to be aware of is going to be two-factor authentication for logins. So you most likely already have to do this whenever you log into HealthSherpa, certainly whenever you log into CMS. It's kind of a new industry standard that they're really pushing on everybody. And kind of to make a long story short, with the changes and the extra client information that we're going to be adding to the agent portal, CMS actually mandates that we have two-factor for our own agent portal. So that's why as soon as these updates release with all this extra client information and all this additional functionality for you, just keep in mind that it will come in tow with a two-factor authentication mandate. So what you'll see is the first time you log into the updated portal, it'll make you, of course, re-enter your username, password. And then the next thing it's going to ask you is it's going to ask you for a phone number to use for the two-factor authentication. And so you'll want to make sure that whatever phone number you put in there is ideally a cell phone that can receive text messages. And when you log in, it'll look very, very similar to what happens when you log into CMS. It'll send a 6-digit code to that phone number via text. You'll grab that code and enter it into your agent portal to log in. That's the first big thing you'll see. But one thing that maybe is kind of nice, at least compared to HealthSherpa CMS per se, is that depending on how your cookies and your internet cache is stored on your computer, most of the time you probably won't have to do that every single time you log in. Again, it really depends. If your browser clears cookies every single time you log out, you probably will have to do the two-factor every single time, but it will be probably a little bit more forgiving, at least, than CMS's two-factor. And then, of course, once you're logged in, if you ever do need to change the two-factor, you can always come right up here to your little drop-down area, same place where you would change your password. You can also change your two-factor authentication phone number, just in case if you have something switch. And of course, if you ever get locked out of your account, your two-factor device is not available to you, anything like that, please make sure to just give a call out to our support team. We'll put in a ticket with the IT folks over here, and we'll make sure that we can get you access to your agent portal. But I did want to mention that right off the bat, because that is going to be the first big change that you will certainly notice when we release all of these updates. But now to really, really dig into the meat of the updates you're going to see, the biggest stuff is going to actually come under this customers tab here. So most everyone's going to see this new tab on your portal, and you'll see the two drop downs are going to be policies and book of business. And these two tabs do slightly different things, and I'll give the quick overview before I click into these tabs. So the policies tab right here, that's essentially going to be replicating the appointment audits that we already do, that you've likely already gotten emails about. But it's going to have a little bit extra functionality, and it's going to be laid out all on one page. So again, you've likely already seen some of the emails we send out. If you write some business and you don't have the appointment through O'Neill Marketing, our system flags that and lets you know, just in case you need to get appointed with them or you need to take any action on that. It's going to be laid out right there, so you'll actually see the enrollments you did on HealthSherpa, and then in one spot you'll be able to see, was I appointed with them? And then it's also going to be checking actually your HealthSherpa submission data against the book of business reports that we get from the carriers, which is where the functionality really hits the next level. Because ideally what we want here is you'll be able to see, I wrote this policy with Ambetter, I am appointed with Ambetter, and then hopefully what we would see is, a week or two after you write that, we'll see that policy pop up in your Ambetter book of business, and then you can match that with that submission, and then you'll be able to know that this policy submission did successfully make it in, and everything is looking good. And then the tab right below that, the book of business, that's really just going to be the second piece there, which is going to be essentially just a list of your policies in the book of business from the carriers. But the nice thing is that it's actually going to be all in one consolidated spot. And so let me actually flip over just to a new tab here that I just have to use to show you this tab. Excellent. So we click into the book of business here. And I will say, obviously, right off the bat, we're having to use fake data for this. So there's only so many examples I can give. And, just didn't want to spend all my day making fake data to put into our system. So you can kind of see what the layout's going to be like. But obviously, for most agents, there's going to be a lot more than this, and it's going to be from a lot of different carriers. But essentially, what this is Bailey wrote this policy for Johnny Test, and that is now in O'Neill Marketing's Ambetter book of business. So when we get that report from Ambetter, we put it into our system, and then Bailey can come in here and boom, she can see this is all the policies you've got in O'Neill Marketing's book of business. But where it gets really nice too is that we're actively getting book of business reports on a pretty consistent basis from most of our top ACA carriers. So that's going to include Ambetter, Oscar, Cigna, United Healthcare, Molina, a lot of the Blue Crosses, Anthem, WellPoint, et cetera. And obviously, too, we are working pretty diligently to expand that to more carriers. And the idea is that as we move along, we want this to be one consolidated place where you can come and get your book of business for most carriers that you're writing. Which, if you've ever had to, play the game of logging into 50 different agent portals, downloading book of business reports, combining them into one to compare them against all your submission data. The idea here is that we're going to have all of that in one spot for you so that you can easily come in, look at all the policies in your book of business, see the information about them, see if they're active, if they've been canceled. I can see this policy, submission date, the inactive date, the modified date, a lot of good stuff like that as well. And of course, too, we're going to be adding a lot more functionality into this page as we move on. But right now, we've kind of just started as the basics, which I do think will be extraordinarily beneficial, especially for any agency admins out there, because you can see here too, I have the ability to export all of the policy data here. But then, again, this is not an admin account. I unfortunately can't show you the view on my account because there's actual client data in there. But an admin will be able to actually see the book of business reports for all of their downline agents. So if you've got 10 agents underneath you, they've got all bunch of policies written under their NPNs, and you need a consolidated report of it. You'll actually be able to hop in here, just modify the filter so that it shows everybody, and you can get an export of all the book of business here. And there will be some other information on that report that's not in this page. So you'll be able to see stuff like, when was this data refreshed so that you can know how new the stuff you're looking at is. You'll be able to see more stuff like, when have they paid premiums? Is the policy active? Are they in a grace period? All sorts of stuff like that, which I assume you guys all know is super, super important when you're trying to manage your book of business. And really, what we want to do here is make it so that these important things that you already have to do are a little bit more frictionless, I guess, than having to, log into all your different portals and pull them there and consolidate them. So this is our first major step towards that. Obviously, as I've said a few times, this is really just phase one. There's a lot more that we are planning to do with this data down the road. But even this, as it is, I think will be extraordinarily beneficial to a lot of people. As always, I would still say it's still important to be able to log in to your agent portals for each carrier so that you can look at information there. Because obviously there's going to be a little bit of a lag between the data we get. It's not always going to be from this morning. Sometimes it might be a week or so old, depending on the carrier. So you'll want to be able to get into that to look at live data, but this will be extraordinarily helpful when you're looking for stuff like, let's say, commission reconciliation, to try to find if, all these policies are in there, or if you just want a list of all the policies that are in your book of business, everything that you've written. This will make it a whole lot easier for you to get just one consolidated report of all of that data. So again, that was the book of business tab here under the customers, and then we'll go over into the policies tab. And so this is what Bailey would see. And in this agency, Bailey is a downline agent, and then I am the admin of this agency. So right now we're only seeing Bailey's data. So you can see the Johnny Test, who was in her book of business, and the Sally Joe Fake, just another client that we put over there. But then let me switch over to my view, because again, if you're an agency principal or admin, your view is going to look a little bit different. So when I come into my policies tab here, you can see that there's a little bit more data. You can see that a lot of these policies are policies actually that I wrote, but then I can also see the policies that Bailey wrote. And then if I wanted to filter too, we've got a few other, fake placeholder agents in this agency that I could come in and filter, if I only want to see Bailey's data, or I only want to see mine. Or you can do filters such as, let's say I only want to see the and better policies I've written, or only want to see the policies in this state, or anything else like that. There's a lot of filters that you can do right here to help organize this. Because again, I've hit on this a few times already, but all of this is just data for demonstration that we put in. None of these are real policies. So also the flip side, of course, too, is that most people are going to have a whole lot more data in their portal than just this. So that's where those filters are really going to be extraordinarily helpful. So on here, there are a few things you can see. First and foremost, the thing to know is that all of this data is actually just pulled directly from HealthSherpa, kind of with what Karen had mentioned earlier. We work with HealthSherpa, so essentially every single day we're getting a report of policies written over the last day. Ideally, in the future, we're going to cut that time down a little bit, but at the at this time, the best we can do is have it on essentially like a 1 day rotating basis. So usually early in the morning before business hours, we've uploaded the new data into the agent portal from the day before. And then when that comes in, it looks for a few things. So, I wrote, let's say, John Wick here. You can see I wrote his policy on the 18th. So last week. And when it comes in, it adds it here so you can see that it was an Aetna policy. You can see the plan name, the premiums, where they live, my agency, the submission date, effective date, all of that good stuff. And then what you can see right here too is the carrier appointment status. And so this ties into, again, those HealthSherpa audits that we run every day and that you've likely been getting emails for pretty frequently as well. Is immediately once this data comes in, our system looks and checks and says, okay, William wrote a policy with Aetna in North Carolina. Is he appointed with that carrier? And here the answer is yes. So you can see, when I wrote that, I was appointed with Aetna, North Carolina, and Molina in South Carolina. But oh no, look at this. I wrote an Ambetter policy in Ohio, but I'm not actually appointed with Ambetter in Ohio. So it's going to flag it right there. And again, in this situation, I also would have received an email from O'Neill Marketing shortly after I wrote that policy informing me that I had written something that I don't have the appointment for. But if you're, again, an agency admin, or if you just want to see a view of all of the non-appointed policies over the last little bit, then you can certainly do this as well. And as I said too, if you're an admin, I'd highly recommend that you just come in here and you filter it to not appointed, and then you can see, okay, beautiful. I wrote an Ambetter Ohio that I'm not appointed with, and then it looks like Bailey wrote a UHC North Carolina policy that she is also not appointed with. So you can see it all right there, just in case you missed the emails or you want a list that you can see for the past little bit. And then the nice thing right here too is, since it says I'm not appointed, there's a button right here that you can click to take action. And essentially what that'll do is that'll just let me go ahead and request that appointment right here and now, so that ideally in the future I can get appointed with Ambetter in Ohio, and so that I can keep all those commissions. So you'll click that and it'll send you just right over to the appointment request area where you could select the states. Maybe I want some other states as well. Just say whether it's a new appointment or whether it's a transfer. And then you can go ahead and send that request in right now. And our contracting team will go ahead and get them started so that we can get you appointed with that carrier. So again, once this is released, I would highly recommend, either for admins or just individual agents, go in there and look at those policies that you are not appointed with. And if it's carriers that you need to write, please go ahead and get appointed with them now. There is no time like the present. And trust me, we say it every year, but those carrier blackout dates and open enrollment will be here before you notice. So definitely be mindful of that, and just check it out. And the idea here is that we want to make it as easy as possible for you to catch these things and take action to get appointed, to make sure that you're getting all the commissions for all the hard work that you're doing. And then the other option here, of course, is you can click ignore carrier. The biggest caveat with that, of course, is uh, don't click this if you just don't want the notifications anymore, right? Because really what this ignore carrier is for is if, let's say, I am appointed with Ambetter directly. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it's probably worth it for me to move it to O'Neill Marketing to have everything under one roof. But that aside, let's say, you're getting a bunch of flags for policies that you are appointed with, and the appointment is maybe just not through O'Neill Marketing. In that case, you can go ahead and click ignore carrier, and then our system will just know that this is a carrier that is appointed elsewhere, or just a carrier that we'll skip over. Again, be mindful of it. Don't just click ignore on everything to stop the notifications, because we have seen a lot of times that frequently that will lead to, just not being aware of stuff. And just keep that in mind, because any policy you're writing that you're not appointed with is commissions that you're losing out on. So, be mindful of it, take action, and go ahead and get those appointments. And if you need an easy way to look through what you've been writing that you're not appointed with through O'Neill Marketing, this will be the best way to do it. You can just come in here, filter that appointment status to not appointment, and then you could just click on all of these buttons and go ahead and just get them done like that. Oops, looks like my screen just glitched out for a second. Let me try something here. Okay, excellent. All right, sorry about that, folks. A little bit. Perfect. So that there was the carrier appointment status. And the other big thing that I want to highlight is this stuff right over here, the BOB status and the BOB potential matches. And this ties into that book of business data that I showed y'all just a minute ago, where, again, just as a reminder, essentially O'Neill Marketing is getting book of business reports from all the carriers that we can, and we're putting them into our system so that we can have a tally of what the carrier has in their system for each agent. And ideally, when we get the submission data from HealthSherpa, you can see it here. Sometimes, but not always, HealthSherpa will include the policy number of that policy. Again, this is something that we're working with HealthSherpa to make this a lot more consistent so that it's a little bit smoother here. But, as you can see, it kind of depends. In my experience, it's usually about half and half depending on the carrier. But all that to say that a lot of times, if we have the policy number on the HealthSherpa data, we'll just look through our book of business and we'll go ahead and match it up. So you can see that that's what happened right here with Johnny Test. Bailey wrote this policy in February, and that policy on HealthSherpa had the policy number in there. And then we looked at our book of business and found the matching policy number for Ambetter. So that's where you can see right here. This policy has been matched up. So we know that this submission that Bailey did has made it into her Ambetter portal. And then you can even view it here. If you want to remove it, you could do that. But then you can see here, this is all the same data from the Ambetter book of business that matches up with that submission that she did. But you can see here as well that not all of them do have that match. And again, I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but just remember, this is all dummy data. I had to put that fake policy in our Ambetter book of business. So in real life, ideally, you should have more than 1 in 7 policies matching. It should be a bit higher than that. Again, it right now really depends on the carrier, but so we'll automatically match anything that we can. But the nice thing too is that since we have all that book of business data, if we have other policies that are maybe a potential match, instead of just matching them up, what they'll do is you'll be able to see the potential book of business matches. And again, little grain of salt here. I don't necessarily have any examples for this right at the moment, but let's say, for example, that this, let's just use, Jane Doe as an example. The HealthSherpa data didn't contain a policy number, but then let's say that we pull a Molina book of business and we can see in our book there is a Jane Doe with the silver 12250, same residence, name, state, and it's assigned to William Merton. We'll have that in our system as a potential match. So then what you'll see in here is there will be a little highlight where it says, hey, there's a potential match here, and then you'll be able to view it and it'll have all the data from the Molina book of business. So again, it'll look pretty similar to this, where it'll just have all that data from the Molina portal. And then you'll have an option where you can look over it and click to match that policy up. Just so that, again, if we don't have that policy number matching directly, you can look over it. And if you're looking over everything and you say, yes, this has definitely got to be it, everything else matches, this is the submission that I did, you can click to manually match those two policies together, which is very convenient moving forward, because the idea for this too is that once you go through, we usually expect, again, this varies a lot between carriers, but we usually expect that within about 2 weeks or so from when you write the business, it should pop up in your carrier portal. So if you wrote a policy 2, 3 weeks ago and it hasn't yet popped up in your broker portal, that's actually something that you'll want to take a look at. So let's say, again, I wrote, we'll use this example, right? Well, actually, no, that wouldn't be a good one. Let's just say this one. We'll stick with Jane Doe. So I haven't seen anything for Jane Doe in my Molina portal. I wrote this policy a few weeks ago, and so I'm a little concerned that something's happened. And then, so similar to the appointment action, you can actually take BOB action here. And what that does is it'll essentially just type up this entire email for you. Again, we don't have an email for Molina right here, but you could take this and send that out to the carrier, or the same thing for let's say Aetna, or for Oscar. You can take all this and you can essentially just take this email right here. It's got their name, information, policy ID, all that good stuff. You can just copy that and you could put it directly into an email and send that off to the carrier. Or again, if you are maybe the admin of an agency, another nice thing that you could do too is we have this little status right here. If it's been over 2 weeks and we haven't found a match, let's say you've done that, you've gone through and looked at all the potential matches and you're still not finding them, you could filter to just these potential, these ones that are missing a match, and then you can export this whole data sheet right here. And then you can take that and you can have that on your side too as something that you can bring to the carriers. And you can tell them, hey, I wrote all these policies on HealthSherpa, but none of them have popped up in my UHC book of business. We need to look into this to figure out what's going on. And that's kind of the whole idea for this, and why we want to match it up to the book of business data is really to make all of these things a lot easier for you. Because I know if you've ever had to do any sort of commission reconciliation, those are usually going to be the first things you're looking for, right? Am I appointed with this carrier? And this policy that I wrote, did it make it into my book of business? And, is it still active? And so the idea here is that we've covered you for the appointment stuff. That'll all be shown right here. If you wrote the policy and you weren't appointed, you'll be able to see it right there. And then we're also making it as easy as possible to check and make sure that that policy actually made it into your book of business. And then so, once 2, 3 weeks go by, you can hopefully see a list of policies that you wrote on HealthSherpa that are not in your carrier book of business, and you can take those and send that to the carrier so that they can look into it and figure out what's going on. And then, of course, the final form of this too will be, I have all these policies I wrote. All of these policies also made it into my book of business. I can pull a book of business report right on the portal, again, just by going to this book of business tab right below the policies tab. I can look at that, and then that should make it pretty easy to compare that all once again to your commission statements. And so you'll have essentially just everything soup to nuts, right? From the submission, you'll see the submission, you'll see that you were appointed with that policy at the time of submission. You'll see that that policy made it into your carrier portal and your book of business there. And then from our commission statements, you'll be able to see that that policy has been paid out to you. And then you'll be able to see too if anything went wrong along the way, if you either were appointed or it didn't make it into your book of business, or it made it into the book of business and didn't get paid out. The whole logic of this portal is to really try to take that process that I know for a lot of agents does require a lot of bouncing back and forth between statements and portals and HealthSherpa. And we want to take as much of that as we can and condense it into one spot on our agent portal. It's still, of course, everybody knows, always paramount to keep an eye on your book of business and do that management to make sure that everything's staying active and is staying paid up. So, of course, this is not to say that this portal will, do everyone's job for them. There certainly will still be some stuff that you have to do. You'll want to look into it, and you, of course, will want to stay on top of it. But the whole idea with this is to make some of those more laborious and repetitive tasks as consolidated as possible and try to add some resources to your plate to make all of that as easy as possible as well, so that ideally you're just making sure everything is looking good and let our system do a lot of the checks for you, so that you really only have to put time and effort into the things that are going wrong, or the stuff that hasn't made it into your book of business or hasn't been paid out, and spend less time going through each HealthSherpa submission, going through each line on your book of business reports and all of that stuff. So that's where I think this will be very, very beneficial. And again, I've said it a few times, but I think especially for agency admins and agency principals, this is really going to be an invaluable resource that I don't really think that you'll be able to get anywhere else. So I've taken up a lot of time, so I won't say too much more, except that, as Karen said, this will be coming out sometime within the next few weeks. By the time that gets released, we might have some more information for you. And then, of course, shortly thereafter, we'll have some more tutorials, demonstrations, and a lot of FAQs too. So keep your eyes out for when those releases come through and when this is released public. And I would, of course, highly recommend everybody, when that does come out, play around with it, familiarize yourself with it. Obviously, we've been working on troubleshooting this for a long time. So, everything should be working pretty smoothly, but play around with it and just definitely familiarize yourself with it, because I truly believe that the more you familiarize yourself with this system, the more work that you can actually take off of your plate, make your life a little bit easier, and make sure you can spend most of your time doing sales, making money, and maybe leaving a little bit more of the back end stuff to our systems. So Karen, thank you so much. Everybody else, I really appreciate you as always coming out. I will turn it back over to Karen.
Great. Thank you so much, Will. That was awesome to see. And I just want to share one last screen with everyone. And so we just want to thank you all for attending today. And I hope you're as excited as we are about all these new features on the agent portal. And I don't know anybody else that offers this for their agents and agencies. So this is really just very cutting edge for us. And we're excited to offer it to everyone. So thank you for attending. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our support team or to your agent consultant. And I know there are some questions, and I will respond to all your questions following the webinar today. And our next webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, April 29th. And you can register when you get this, the email that's going to be sent out to you. There'll be a link there, or you'll also see it every Thursday in our newsletter. You can register there, or I'm sure you all are getting the text messages and reminders as well. So thank you again for your time. We appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will be in touch. Thank you all. Bye-bye.